Midnight Marauders by Tribe Called Quest. Arguably one of the most classic hip-hop albums of all time, a perfect sequel to their previous critically acclaimed work, The Low End Theory, and their debut album. It's a classic, and despite coming out in 1993, it hasn't aged a day, mainly production-wise. And I feel like the genius behind Tribe's production is what carries this project. Their drums, their sample choices, their verses just sound really well polished. It's one of the best that Tribe has to offer in general. And it's for sure that one record that you could recommend to anyone and that person would probably like it. And yeah, it was commercially successful, of course. Everybody loved it, except the Rolling Stone that would give them a 4 out of 10. But many times these critics are just straight up wrong, so we can just leave them to the past anyways. It's not like they're clearly bought by certain people who are famous and have a lot of money. No, I've never thought of that. But back to the Midnight Marauders, I think that this project is just the natural evolution from their previous work. It defines their musical style once again. And honestly, after listening to this album on a daily basis, to be completely honest, one song just stood out for me more. Not that the rest aren't impressive enough, obviously. It's one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time, mainly in the 90s. But one song just stood out for me more, and that song is God Lives Through, the outro of the album, which surprisingly isn't as talked about as much. You know, when it comes to this album, people like to talk about award tour, lyrics to go, perhaps, Steve Biko, We Can Get Down, Electric Relaxation, obviously, but you gotta remember that God Lives Through is the final impression that you have of this entire project. It's just a closure, so it holds a special place in the album, after all. The song consists of 5 samples used in the most clever way possible, and they even sampled a song for the same album, which is just so cool. And they would do that many times later on in their career, mainly their last album, which is my favorite one by the way, and obviously their best, which means you should listen to it immediately, and that's an order.
Anita Applebaum said you gotta put me on.
So in this video, I'll show you how I remade this beat, and it was honestly harder than I thought. But it was still enjoyable anyways. I definitely learned a lot while understanding the production. And by the end of the video, I'll rate how hard it was to remake this from 0 to 5. With 0 being this monstrosity, and 5 being, I guess, Daft Punk or any good artist who isn't the left one. Starting off with Dig On It, we notice that the original sample is a bit different in comparison to how it sounds in God Lives Through. The drums and the other instrumentals are a lot louder, so we gotta filter it out. The pitching, however, seems to not be changed. The second sample is basically the base of the entire song. It is present in the track from the beginning to end. It sounds slightly lower pitch in comparison to the original song, so about -1 semitone. The third sample is quite genius, and Tribe has used it in many of their other songs. They basically loops the worded by -1 semitone.
Imagine if the shit was really talking about space too. Imagine if the shit was really
The fourth sample are the drums. And as you can hear, it's not the same pattern. That's because Q-Tip was one of the first guys to actually sample drums in this way. He would basically chop the drums and then rearrange it the way he wanted. So he was one of the guys that made this popular back in the day. And now the final sample, which is straight from the same album.
Honey, Jamaica is the place. Take off your boots cause you can't run the race.
And before I show you the final result, in a rating from 0 to 5 stars, I'll rate this 2.5 stars in difficulty. Wasn't anything impossible, but you gotta have good ears to hear the samples well. And also, I'm sorry, Tribe, for comparing you to whoever is this person on the left. Now, onto the final result.
MCs that claim they want some, but see I create sounds that make your ears go numb. Peace to Shazam, yeah, you know how we go. My best friend Steven at the Home Depot.
And there is where the video was supposed to end, but I had the brilliant idea of making a Tribe Called Quest style beat. At least that's what I hope it is. It was fun making this, to be honest, just making sure the samples even match. And I have drawn tracks like that before, but making sure I'm following one style is just harder, because when in other tracks I'm just doing my own thing, but in here I have to like attempt copying someone's style, and that style is pretty difficult because I don't have a studio nor the experience of Q-Tip and the other people that works in those albums. Okay, bye.
Pelo chão, vivi da vida de pássaro que não sabia que podia.
Pelo chão, vivi da vida de pássaro que não sabia. Pelo chão, vivi da vida de pássaro que não sabia.
Salta de repente.